Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
It just got 11:30. You are listening to The Weekly with me, Sam Marshall. Every week we unpack some really interesting things, people, places. And you know what? This week I thought I wanted to do a sports edition. So I wanted to have a chat to somebody who is fast becoming a household name. He is a sports journalist, an analyst, and a commentator. And it's not often that you find somebody with that skill set, because you'll find somebody who's either competent as a journalist. You might find somebody who's credible as a writer, but you won't often find somebody who merges the various disciplines within a sports analysis. So, for example, you could hear him on radio, you'll see him on TV. He has a website that he runs where he commentates around sports issues. Then he's also got some brand and lifestyle stuff. So I'll unpack all of that in the next 27 minutes. Jody Hendricks, good morning. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Sam Marshall.
Okay, so I'm right when I say that there are very few people that plug into different levels or different disciplines within the sporting structure of journalism.
Yeah, and it comes down to strategy, basically. I started off with RSG Radio, which is the National Afrikaans radio station, in 2013, doing one soccer report a week. And after 6 months, they moved it up to 2 weeks, or to 2 reports a week. And then ever since then, I kind of worked out a strategy for myself in terms of where I wanted to be in my career. Commentating was always important and a goal for me. Presenting a sports show was important for me. Doing analysis, because I thought really that's where there was a gap in the sports journalism market in South Africa. And I kind of combined all the things. It took a couple of years to get there, but I'm not complaining at the moment. I'm exactly where I want to be in terms of my career. It might change in the next year or two, but for now I'm happy.
Yeah, and I know, one of the funny things is that when people listen to you, you've got this very mature voice, and you probably think that Jody Hendricks is about 67, but he's not. He's in his
36 years young.
Yeah, he's actually in his 30s. Where did the love for sport? Was it, I think with most people, a love for sport develops through either some family member played sport, watched sport with a father, had a brother that was into sport. Where did your love for sport start?
Yeah, with my family, exactly that, Sam. And going back, I'm 36 now, so going back to the late 80s, early 90s, I grew up in a small town of Strand, which is about 40 km outside Cape Town, and a very sporting community, a very sporting family, and that's where my love for sport started. I remember in the Currie Cup, where before Super Rugby in the late 80s, early 90s, the derby between Western Province and Northern Transvaal. So half of the family was Western Province, the other half was Northern Transvaal, and it just worked out that they played each other in the final every year in that period. And then obviously the other big sporting event was the derby between Manchester United and Liverpool. Again, the family divided in half. And what I always found interesting was not the game. I love the game, or I love sport, obviously, but for me it was always the stats. The amount of tackles the player made, how many meters he makes in a game. That kind of thing interests me, and that's what I make a living of today, is going through those statistics and formulating opinions and analysis.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about sport, and at some point in my life, I was also a sports journalist before
I looked up to you. I remember those
before
days.
I moved on. But there's this idea that the modern sports journalist needs to understand not only the stats anymore, but they also need to understand the psychology of the team. They need to be able to, in the analysis now, it's the complete and holistic picture. And we're not just interested if Siya Kolisi ran 5 meters or 10 meters or 25 meters in the last game, but why and what drives him. And now we're interested in kind of behind the scenes and how they train and how they work. How have you found in your own personal capacity, professionally as well, the evolution of commentating, the evolution of analytics, the evolution of reporting? How's it changed for you? Because I do, and I'm sure you do, in the 80s, Radio 2000, and you would listen to that commentator. It was very staccato. It was a very different style of commentating that.
I think personality nowadays plays a big role. Those staccato days, I think, are long gone, even though it's the platform for us. and I'm a firm believer in change and in evolution, and in evolution in the industry that you're in, evolution in sport. And for me, for example, it was important for my knowledge of rugby, which is the sport that I focus on mainly, was to get a better understanding in sport. I did a level 1 coaching course a couple of years back, just so that I can understand the technical analysis and why a coach would, for example, select a certain player in a team, for why they would approach a game with the forwards instead of letting the backline run with it, to get that. So I think in terms of knowledge and evolution, anybody can get a piece of paper and read a stat that says Siya Kolisi is 27 years old. He ran 5 meters against Argentina last week and he missed 3 tackles. That's the easiest thing. But why? What led to him missing those tackles? And I think that's where your research, for one, comes important, your background knowledge, and to be able to hold a conversation with experts, because the last thing you want to do as an analyst is sound stupid or have your analysis questioned. So I think in terms of research, in terms of knowledge, plays an important part, and being a personality, not just saying boring stats, making it your own and owning that spot that you have. If I think for me is important, and that has worked for me the last 3 to 5 years that I've been doing it.
Okay, so that does beg the follow-up question, because if you're talking about owning the analysis, if you're talking about being comfortable and being a little bit different, at which point did Jody know that what's coming out of my mouth is credible? Because at some point, I know for all of us in the industry, for all of us, at some point when you step in front of that microphone, in front of the camera, there is a moment where you're not self-doubt, but you're questioning the credibility of the kind of content that comes out of your mouth. Should I have said that? But at what point did you become comfortable with what comes out of your mouth and was being processed by the brain?
For me, the turning point in my career was probably the 2015 Rugby World Cup in England, and up until that point, I was establishing myself, looking for opportunities, looking for gaps in the industry, in the sport, and then the Rugby World Cup came, and for some reason, RSG, there were 49 games being played, and RSG gave me 32 of the 49 games to do, and all of a sudden, for a national radio station to give you that kind of scope means you've got to do something right. And then my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I got, on the first day of the World Cup, on the opening day of the Rugby World Cup in 2015, I was on 4 different TV shows. And that kind of like, okay, these people are taking me seriously now. And what I'm saying, and what I'm saying they're taking seriously. I was asked to write all kinds of columns and opinion pieces. And that's when I realized. So for me, 2015 was probably when I started realizing, instead of looking for the opportunities, I thought, okay, the opportunities has arrived and I've got to make the best of it. I've got to own it. And for me, so I always say that the 2015 Rugby World Cup for me was probably the turning point in me going from looking for opportunities to me realizing that I'm established.
And then what was it? Hello, mommy. They taking me seriously.
No, look, the fam, that's an important part. My mom has been my biggest supporter since I was 14 years old. I always tell the story. When I was 14 years old, I had Mark Gilman on the radio one day in a taxi when he was doing the morning show on Good Hope. And
that's years ago.
And I'm giving away my age again. And I remember, and something he said, look, the radio was on in the taxi every morning, but this one specific morning, he just said something that grabbed my attention, and I listened. And I went home that afternoon and I told my mom, I'm going to be on radio one day. I was 14 years old. I didn't know how I was going to be on radio. I didn't know what it entailed to get onto radio. But I told my mom, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, I know you will, son. I don't think she realized what I was telling her. All she said was, and so that's important. And she's also till today my biggest critic. She phoned me the other day to give me some criticism over my sports show about a word that I used to repeatedly and that she didn't like.
And what was the word?
Into. So, and then she said, use another word, because I said, I was telling a story. So in the 5 minutes that I was telling the story, I probably used the word about 4 or 5 times, maybe 6. And she picked it up and she said, you could have used the other word. So she's my biggest crit and also my biggest supporter at the same time, Sam.
But let's be honest though, there are words that we get stuck on. And for me, when I was doing the morning shows, a couple of words, but one of the words that got stuck for me was maybe. And I would find a way to phrase it, but I wasn't the only one. I realized that
Yeah.
everybody. So, what is your words that you get stuck
When
on?
I started, it was shoe. So you
Shoe.
tell me something, then I'll go. And, I was busy formulating an opinion because you throw something randomly at me and I didn't have time to process. So I'll just go, shoe. That's interesting. So that's when I started. Something that's been pointed out to me recently by a listener actually was that, because I work in Afrikaans radio, was when I do analysis, then I tend to say it moet sê. So I'm trying to steer away from that as well. So that's the one that's I'm working on at the moment. It moet sê.
Okay, you're listening to The Weekly with me, Sam Marshall. We've got Jody Hendricks in studio. We're about to take an ad break. When we come back, we're going to talk other things other than sport, because he's also developing the brand. And there's a couple of things. For example, he runs a website. He has got a beer named after him. And we're going to talk all of those things and then some uncomfortable questions towards the end of the show. We take an ad break.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
Hey Bonang, how are you?
Hi Tuli, you look so beautiful. Hey, long time no see. What happened to your skin, by the way? The last time I saw you, you had a lot of blemishes and breakouts. It was so terrible, man.
Wow, thanks for that, Bonang. Luckily, I discovered DMK. Have you heard of DMK?
DMK? Who are they?
DMK is a paramedical skincare brand that specializes in all skin conditions. Would you like their number?
Yes, please.
I know you're not good at numbers, so let me give you their website address because your skin looks terrible. It's www.dmkskincare.co.za.
Harnessing the power of talk radio. brandlive.co.za.
Welcome back to The Weekly with me, Sam Marshall. This week we're having a chat to Jody Hendricks. He's a bit of a Jody does everything in sport. He is a commentator, he's an analyst, he is a writer, he is a blogger, and he's also developing his own brand. And we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. But I want to talk about this brand extension, because a lot of sports journalists, and maybe this is the new way of thinking, but a lot of sport journalists don't have a website that's named after them where they contribute to content, developing content that is not related, although people argue that beer goes hand in hand with sports. Talk to me about the realization that you wanted to develop this brand and kind of extend this JH concept.
Well, first of all, it started the beginning of 2017 with the caps, because I like fashion, I like buying clothes, and I used to spend an insane amount of money on caps, up to 600-700 rand for a cap. And it was these New York caps, the NY caps, and I thought to myself, I'm spending so much money on
And I've never seen you in a cap.
I wear it actually. And then I thought, why not start my own brand? So I started doing some research. I started speaking to a couple of people who's got their own clothing brands, their own caps and so forth. And it was actually quite simple. So you source the caps quite, for the cheapest available price, but it's got to be high quality. And then you just embroider your own label on there. And I got a designer to design the JH label for me. And that's where it started. And the idea behind the caps initially was I didn't want it commercialized. I didn't want it in every store. So I did it in packs of 30. So the first range that went out, I gave a couple away for free to do for people to do marketing. But at the end of the day, for that specific range, you can say that I'm only one of 30 people that's wearing that cap. Where if you wear, for example, another cap, the one that I mentioned earlier, it's available in almost every store. Every second person wears it, and for me, that kind of loses its value. So I wanted something valuable for the people who decide to buy my caps, and that's where the idea for the JH brand was kind of like born. We did a second run with the caps. That also went well. So all 30 was sold. Because I also don't want. I also look at my quantity. I don't want to produce 1,000 caps and then I sit with 900 at the end of the day. So I do it in small amounts. I do one-on-one sales. I do corporate sales. So if a company, for example, want to buy 10 or 20 caps for the staff or whatever, that's the kind of market that I'm going to. And then in May 2017, I started, because I've always had this idea, and this is what I know. I know the media industry quite well. Is that, and something a former boss told me a couple of years ago, is online is the way to go. When I was working as a magazine staff writer, and the company that I was working for at the time, they started investing heavily into online. Online was the way to go.
And it still hasn't reached its full potential
yet.
yet.
Not in South Africa, not at all,
yet,
not by far. Yeah, long mile. So, and then I tried it. The first time I tried it was in 2011. Failed miserably. Lost a couple of $1,000. Trusted the wrong people, that kind of thing. So I kind of put it on ice. I started focusing on my career again, and then in 2017 I thought, okay, this is the
time's right. I'm
going to do it. I got a friend, Gareth Duncan, who's out in Cape Town, who also does web design, and he also now has his own suits. Also a small entrepreneur, and he helped me establish it. And then we went live in May.
This is with the caps, right?
No, this is with the website. So the caps was earlier in 2017.
And it's WB. It's your name. It's WB.
Just Jody.
Just Jody.
.co.za. So basically, what Just Jody is, we launched it. By the way, this is the story that I was getting to. Was when Arnold Schwarzenegger was in South Africa, I got an exclusive interview with him.
I saw the picture.
Yeah, well, we made a video as well. We did it live on RSK Radio, and we made a video of that. And we launched the website with me interviewing Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the biggest stars in the world. And I put it out
sports and movies and politically as well.
Yeah, so it was. He was here to promote the Arnold Classic that happens in Joburg every year, and that's how we launched Just Jody. So if you wanted to see the video of me interviewing Arnold Schwarzenegger, you could listen to the podcast on RSK's website. But if you wanted to see the visual.
Yeah, you had to go to your website.
You had to go to my website, and subsequently we mostly focus sports. Obviously, that's what I know. It's a big part of the Just Jody.co.za brand lifestyle. So, for example, theatre shows. I just posted an article last week, Thursday, about Adidas and the financial results, about how they've grown. I do profile interviews. You one of those people pretty soon, by the way.
Cool.
So where I target the people that I target. Is one of the agreement is I'll do it. We'll do a nice profile interview, but you've got to post it on social media and draw people to the website. At the moment, just over a year and 3 months later, I get about between 10 to 15,000 hits a month, depending obviously on
the content,
and the people that, and for example, companies, hotels would invite me to their launches. I'd write a piece about me attending, who was there, and I'll tweet them, and they'll promote it on their sites. I get invited to events, so I'll write about the events that I attend, and that kind of thing. And it's all just to generate. I've got a couple of advertisers that are invested in me, but obviously it's small time. I'm not gonna expect people to spend R1 million a month on me. If they're willing to spend 5,000 rand, I'll work out a deal for them for 5,000, 10,000, whatever.
But we're not turning away the person who wants to spend R1 million.
Yeah, obviously, when I get there one day.
Okay, very, very quickly. I wanted to run through a couple of things. What's the sound that you hate in the morning? What's the sound that you don't want to hear in the morning?
My alarm.
Your alarm clock in the morning.
I actually changed it the other day because I had this generic one that was on my phone, and then I thought, no man, I've got to change it, and I changed it to the Black Eyed Peas. Tonight's gonna be a good night, so give me some motivation in the morning. What
does Jody sound like when he has an orgasm? Shoot.
Yeah. Like that. Exactly like that.
What was the name of your fourth girlfriend?
Sandy.
I
think Sandy. She could be number 5, but somewhere there was a Sandy when I just started dating.
What was the girl that once you dated her, you realized I should have never been with this girl ever?
Sure. I didn't date her. There was a couple of one-night stands that I can say that about. But yeah, probably Sandy again.
What's the thing about sports journalists that people don't know?
The amount of work that we do behind the scenes. So what the year is, for example, when I go on radio for 15 minutes, 5 minutes or whatever, they just hear me blabbing or doing something. They've got no idea the amount of work that goes. For example, the 15-minute sports rap that I do, it could easily take up to 3-4 hours maybe to get a quality product out there. That's sourcing your information, editing, checking.
And that's
your
daily,
facts. Yeah, that's daily. So for me, that the people always say, yeah, you've got this amazing career. They've got no idea about the amount of hard work that goes in behind the scenes that people don't know about.
What's the coolest thing you've ever heard about yourself or Googled about yourself?
The coolest thing I heard about myself is that I can dance, which is not true, by the way. So I can't dance, but apparently some people think. I think I was in Europe and people said, you can move. And I'm like, come to South Africa, you'll see. I can't.
Not like Jagger.
Yeah.
Big mistake that you look back now and you thought that was the best mistake I've ever made?
Probably the initial phase of Just Jody in 2011. I know exactly what the loopholes are now, so I can use that experience and implement it in Just Jody 2018.
Which one of your families loves you the most?
Absolutely.
Other than your mother?
Other than my mother, I'd have to say I think my older sister, although she competes with my baby sister as well. But I think my older sister, but just because we've known each other a bit longer and know each other a bit better.
Okay, so we got a couple of more minutes left. The Springboks have left for Argentina.
Yeah.
Rassie Erasmus wasn't happy with the breakdown last week. He said they were aggressive, but there just wasn't enough work that could have been done, especially with the turnaround of that ball. What is your sense of what South Africa would have to do in order to have a convincing win?
I think just go back to the basics, and one of the things that stood out for me on Saturday was Malcolm Marx. Incredible rugby player, South African rugby player of the year, but he missed 3 lineouts. And that if you do that against the All Blacks, Argentina didn't punish us, but if you do that even against Australia, you're going to get punished. So that's something we'll have to look at. Andre Pollard missing some incredibly easy kicks. If you miss those kind of kicks against New Zealand, they're going to punish you again. So I think they need to go back to the basics. It wasn't the best performance. The breakdown was a concern. I think the lineouts was a concern. I think the general play at number 10. But then there were some positives as well. I think the 2 young wingers, of course, Makazole Mpimpi and Apiwe Dianti, 2 tries each. They were fantastic. I'm not quite certain about that centre combination. I think that's where
he's still experimenting as well
with Andre Esterhuis and Lukanyam. I think especially if Jan Serfontein is fit again, I think he should definitely get a look in. So there's a couple of things, but I think they need to use they learned a lot in Saturday's game, and they're going to have to learn better their performance in Argentina. The Saturday away from home, it's going to be difficult because the real challenge is going to be Australia and New Zealand in a couple of weeks' time. So they need to use.
And we saw what New Zealand did this past weekend.
Yeah, to Australia. Australia is actually going to be. I think if we manage to beat Australia, we'll be able to in second
put up a good showing.
Yeah, in the tournament. But if Australia comes out guns blazing, we're going to have problems, and then we're going to have to fight it out with, for example, Argentina for the 3rd place, and I don't think that's exactly where South African rugby wants to be.
I want to have a chat to you about the mood as well. There seems to be, this is my sense, that we seem to be happier with Rassie Erasmus in the beginning of his coaching
Tenure.
his coaching tenure with the Springboks than we were with the last coach. And I know there was optimism for the last coach too, but I feel we're a little bit more optimistic. Do you know why?
I think there was a lot of pessimism when Alistair was appointed. A lot of people didn't want him to get the job, so you had that general feeling, and I think he was set up to fail. He was appointed less than 2 months before the series against Ireland in 2016. He had a lot of challenges. For example, when they travelled overseas, they couldn't all of a sudden fly business class. He had to get permission to select. They put a cap on the amount of players he could select from overseas, with all of that
doesn't exist with
Rassie Erasmus, and I think that was real unfair, and that's why I maintain up until today that Alistair was set up to fail, and unfortunately he did. So any coach, I don't think a win percentage for a national coach should be 44%, and I think Alistair was justified in leaving. I think he should have left maybe a couple of months earlier, but I think
when we heard the initial rumours,
he should
have left then.
I think Rassie, I'm not convinced by Rassie. By all means, I think Alistair would have done maybe a similar job given the resources that he has. But I think with Rassie, he's got the backing of his employers, and that's important. Where Alistair maybe did not have that throughout his tenure as coach.
Okay, that's Jody Hendricks. That's his story. This is the Weekly with me, Sam Marshall. Every week we chat to interesting people. We unpack their stories, what they're doing. So Jody Hendricks, you can log onto his website. It's www.justjody.co.za. He's got a beer brand out. It's called Jody Hendricks, JH. He's got the cap brand out. But for all the details, just log onto his website to find out more. Catch me again next week where we have a chat to two authors. We'll be unpacking an interesting book called A Ball in the Mud. Jody.
Yeah, just the beer is called Just Jody Brew.
Just Jody Brew, and I thought it was just Horny Brew. Anyway, that's where we leave it. We'll catch you again next week.
Live from 27 boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.